everybody to the Bars2Chains Podcast, where we're going to give you an insight on music and sports. But first and foremost, I would like to talk about our beloved sponsors that help this podcast go. First off, I'd like to talk about the Anchor app. The Anchor app is for all of you podcasters out there that are looking to start a podcast. First and foremost, this is the app that you want to use for these reasons specifically. For one, it's free. That's the most luxurious point of it is like usually you'll have to pay some sort of fees to try and get your stuff across. This is really simple and easy to use, and it's super, super inventive. The creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast is also a huge luxury, and this is not strictly from a computer that you have to use it from. You can simply edit your episodes from your phone, and it's just like I said, it's perfect to use if you're just trying to get one off the ground. Also, not to mention that the distribution for it is super easy to use, and it'll post your episodes to Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many, many more in one simple touch of a button. You can also make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. So it's also one of those, you're not really spending money because it's free, but as long as you give them a shout out, you very much so can make a bang for your buck. All while it's everything you need in a podcast in one place. It's simple to use, and it's not anything complex that you actually have to try and navigate around. Now to our second sponsor, Lashesbyyadii is a great business for those of you that are female listeners that want to get their eyelashes done. Also, for my fellas out there that would love to get their girlfriends or wives their lashes done, she's very flexible with her schedule, and she will make sure that your lashes get done in the exact way that you want them done and in perfection. It's as simple as that. Book an appointment with her, and she will get you going. And I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the show. Welcome, everybody, back to the Bars2Chains Podcast. This is episode 2 coming at you. Unfortunately, today, it is just me today. My co-hosts, Haney and Joe, got some stuff going on, but we're still going to provide you the best content that we can and keep it coming at you live. So 2020 is a year that, not a fun one in terms of shit going on around the world, but for the music industry, we still haven't skipped a beat. A lot of good albums, a lot of good stuff that's came out and came through the pipeline. I'm going to kind of go through my sleeper albums that I felt maybe didn't get a whole lot of airway, stuff that was maybe slept on during the year that I just kind of feel needs to be recognized. Now, I do have a couple albums that Joe and Haney are going to wait to talk about, so I won't spoil their surprises on which albums they want to talk about. But I will go through the ones that I have picked out. So the first one that I would like to talk about is excuse me if I butcher the name on this, but it's the Modus Vivendi by 070 Shake. So I'll be honest, their work, even from the production standpoint of it all, it being a part of good music, I'm surprised that I haven't heard about them sooner, because I am a big fan of all the albums that have came through that label. A lot of good work, and it seems very inventive, and not all albums sound similar. You know, that there's a lot of diversity that goes into those albums. But this one kind of hit me differently because it is literally, I mean, I know it's kind of like a common term, but it is a whole ass vibe. There's just, from track to track, it seems like the artist's vision is always changing like a chameleon through the whole album from beginning to end, sorry. And it just kind of, it resonates, you know. I feel like there was just a lot of diversity to it, and it just kind of, it made a big punch when it came to every song got better as it went through. My personal favorites, I mean, the intro was hard as hell. I mean, I will give it that as well to begin with. It kind of has that, like, hard to really compare it to stuff because it's so unique that it just really makes it sound like it kind of was. They were shooting for something that was unheard of. And then to boot, the instrumentals on it were just phenomenal. I mean, literally across the board, the production company that had put that through, phenomenal, great work all around. Actually, let's see. So my favorite on there as far as lyricism was probably Rocket Ship. It really just had a different vibe to it. It's something that I kind of just pop in, lay back, hang out, and just kind of have some time to think. If I'm really gonna be honest about how it kind of gives me that vibe. And then as far as my favorite instrumental on it, it's definitely got to be Terminal B. It just has that like super mellow, super chill vibe to it. And yeah, I mean, definitely go check this out. I mean, it's definitely something. It's not super like, violent to it. You know what I mean? Like it's just something that you can kind of sit back and chill and listen to. Now to keep the show moving on, the next album that I would like to talk about is Big Conspiracy by J Hus. So this is not typically my go-to genre, as it is categorized as the Afro swing genre, but it is something that really should be recognized because it kind of, if I'm going to compare it to something, I would say it gave me that Damian Marley vibe where it just kind of was like super, how would you say it? It's super mixture to the beats that they're using, and it's not overly excessively abused. If that makes sense, what I'm basically trying to say about it is the sound of the artist going towards the beats were very unique in terms of it wasn't repetitive. Like every song doesn't sound like the other to me. Maybe when you listen to it, it kind of does. So it is one of those albums I do recommend you listen to it twice before you give your input on how it came out the first time you listen to it, and you start picking up on J Hus's lyricism to it. Like you can tell it wasn't something that was just kind of, we're done with this track, move on to the next one, and just kind of repetitive and staying into the same element. Like he very much so moved around to beats and had a wider variety, and even working with the artist LMI. I'm actually very fond of her work, and I like the way that she does the same thing on her beats. She's very, very versatile in making a unique sound that is... It's unique. I mean, just to say the least, it's just something that you really need to listen to it. I would give it the appraisal that it deserves. I mean, it's not like one of those, album of the year type deals. It's kind of one of those like, hey, if you are listening for a new artist that you would like to look at, that's definitely one of them. So with that being said, I'll kind of get into my favorite tracks on it. As you can already tell, my favorite one is the One and Only by LMI. And it's just, like I said, the reason why is because it definitely sets a good vibe to it, and it has the versatility that albums should have, especially when it's coming from a genre that... in the United States, it's not. I rarely hear about people talk about the Afro swing genre, but it really does deserve its recognition. And I like when I get into these sub genres of rap, because I mean it's basically what I mean. If we're talking about the family tree of rap music, being that the top of the rap music tree was the blues, it is one of those things where you start getting into the fruits of the tree. And this is one of those things that it does. It very much so gets into the core element of how albums should be constructed. In terms of trying to make it unique. Now, just to kind of give you some feedback on the Afro swing genre, its origin is really unique because, according to Wikipedia, it is a derivative of the dancehall and Afro beats. Now, from my own opinion of it, it very much has that, like, how would you say it? Like almost kind of like Caribbean meets trap music meets very unique in terms of voice projecting from having that. Like I said, it kind of like if I'm gonna categorize it as something, it very much has that Damian Marley vibe to it, and that's why I liked it, because it just, the lyrics were on point, and I felt like it was just everything I needed to hear in terms of that genre. So I hope I hear very much more from that artist itself. Now, the next artist that I would like to try and get into today is Currency. Currency's album, it's the Tonight Show with Currency, produced by, I believe it was, not produced. It was with Currency and Kenny G as a collaborative album. That album by itself, and as we get into the top 10s for 2019, you were going to start seeing that Currency is someone that deserves a lot more recognition in terms of versatility than most people give him. A lot of people, well, Currency's kind of one of those artists that he kind of had this, like, a lot of people only, to me and my friends, he kind of only had recognition when he was working with, like, the artists. A big one, I guess you would say, is more like the Lil Wayne stuff, when he would pop up on mixtapes and he'd pop up on a couple albums, and people would be like, yeah, no, that was a good song. And, they only give, it seems like at that time, they'd give Wayne more of the recognition because, being truthful, that was kind of like, it seemed like maybe that was more of his way in. Now, I know Currency is a great artist overall, and he, deserves his recognition. But in terms of his work with other artists, I can definitely see the argument made that a lot of those have made more of the recognition, I would say, that goes noticed. Now, the reason why I like this album a lot is because it very much goes. It gives a lot of versatility. I mean, track 1 all the way down to the very last track, it just kind of, it hits me different every single time. Like, every single song is just going through, and it's not skipping a beat. It's very much so, man, it's tough to talk Currency because he's so lyrical when it comes to when he's going through, breaking down every single bar. It very much rubs off, like, you can tell that this is unique to that artist. Like, the stuff that he's spitting is, it's not anything that I've kind of felt from anybody that's recent in the game. Now, I know that we are talking 2020, but I do personally have a favorite from last year that he had dropped, which was the collaborative album that he had with Wiz Khalifa. And I think that was a perfect blend of how albums and mixtapes should go. When you find, well, for collaborative albums, I should say, because when you find beats that work for both artists, it creates such a unique sound that it's kind of like, it's so like you can feel the artist when they're making it, and it's crazy on how it goes. I mean, that, like I said, I'll break into that album later, because that is an album that I am going to be talking about when we get into the top 10s for 2019, when we hit the rewind button for future episodes. And do stay tuned for that, because you are definitely going to want to hear mine and Joe's take on what our top 10 2019 albums are. And me and him always go back and forth in terms of what did he appreciate as top 10, what did I appreciate as top 10, why this artist is better than that artist, what versatility that these artists had when they were putting these albums together. And it just, it makes for such a great argument. And it's fun to do, Nonetheless, though, I will get into a little bit of the Currency album that I really, really liked a lot. So, as far as it wasn't really that long of an album, but sometimes those shorter albums are really better because it leaves you hanging, wanting more. Now, Currency is one of those hard grinders in the studio where you can guarantee, if you're a big Currency fan, that you're going to get more than one album per year. And that's pretty much what he's been doing for some time now. Even last year, he had 2 albums. I think it was, one was, I think it was Static Selecta was one of the artists that he had collabed with. And actually, I believe it's more of like a productive standpoint that it was the collaboration of. But again, like you said, it's one of those yin and yang things where that album that he had with Static Selecta sounded so much more different than the album that he had with Wiz, and it's because he's just so damn versatile when he comes to putting stuff together. It's kind of nuts how it comes together, and it's kind of crazy because he doesn't really switch up his flow so much. Like, the cadence is pretty consistent. But the beats that he works on, it's very kind of like, it blends well. Like, you can almost put him on a trap beat and it sounds just as good as when he's working something more, how would you say it? Like, more lighthearted, more of a lighter beat. And it never drops. It never feels like, oh, you have a hard artist is working on a softer beat, so it kind of sounds weird. You know what I mean? So I would definitely go check this out though. But I did like the intro more so than the rest of it. Now, the other song that kind of gives me a run for its money too is All About the Dough, because it gives that genuine vibe to it that this is a real solid piece of work. Enough so that like I said, 2020 is not over yet, obviously, and we have a lot more albums to unpack, but he definitely put together something that, like 2019, I could see it landing in my top 10, maybe even top 5. But again, I don't want to give too many spoilers away from my top 10 for 2019. So I will get back to that later. But a big shout out to also Denzel Curry for the album Unlocked with himself and DJ Fresh. Another one of those albums that it's so damn good. I mean, if I'm going to be really honest with you, like, I popped that album in to give it a second review last night, and I was just like, holy shit. Like, it is so freaking versatile that it's like, you just want more every single track, and he just delivers on every single one. And even the beginning of the album, it automatically puts you into you're in for a ride. I mean, if I'm going to be honest, it kind of almost, I might get a little backlash on this, but it almost kind of gave me like a little bit of it almost kind of gave me a little bit of a DMX vibe to it, and I don't know why, but I think it's just because, like, the sounds in between bars, it was just kind of really unique. Like I said, it just kind of hit me differently. Now, I wouldn't say it's like a DMX album, because obviously the two don't compare, but it like I said, it kind of gives me a little bit of it gives me almost like a little bit of a feel of like, you can blend rap into, it doesn't have to be cadenced bars every single time. You can have an artist that is using ad-libs and yelling into them, and it sounds freaking dope. And that's how I got the vibe from it. I mean, in and of itself, my biggest, like, holy shit track to it was the Take It Back V2. I kind of got taken back, because I'm just like, damn, bro, like, this dude can freaking spit. And it's kind of crazy because it's not really my big forte. Like, it's not my go-to, I should say. But it very much so hits. And then the track Diet also was another one of those where it freaking puts you into the stratosphere in terms of a whole vibe. And then I usually, because this is kind of a sleeper's ordeal, but I know this wasn't really a sleeper per se, because a lot of people did like this album, but I do want to give it its credit, because I'm very, very big on this artist as a whole. Tory Lanez is the new Toronto 3. was another album that I very much so appreciated. But it's just because Tori's one of those kind of guys where I get the vibe of he's committed to the music that he likes to make, and it just kind of feels like there's not a whole lot of you got a lot of producers telling you how to make your music, because he just kind of seems like it's genuine. It's something that he feels is how he wants to make his music. And I never ever get that vibe off of him that like he's, I don't know if you want to say it like that, but he's getting told to what to put out, and his marketing scheme's, fucking hilarious. I believe there was before the album had dropped, he was playing some track off of it, and like this is during the whole quarantine phase, which obviously take your precautions and do what you need to as far as this pandemic goes. But his marketing scheme was he had some girls at his house, and he's pouring milk on them for whatever reason. I'm like, bro, like you're fucking lit, bro. Like, I mean, where do you even come up with this shit, dog? And so it just, but when the album dropped, I was just kind of like, bro, every track is so versatile. Like you're coming hard on a couple of them, and then you're going into a storytelling segment and then it breaks back into that like faster paced, let's, put something that's going to bang on the radio. And then it just kind of, it keeps switching up. And that's why I appreciate his artistry a lot more in the game today than I do with other artists. I know that a lot of other artists right now are starting to hit the head waves, but he's another one of those guys where just he's still at it, and he's still grinding. And not that he's like an older artist, but he's one of those guys I could see him being around for the long haul. I mean, it's just amazing on how his productivity goes into his work, and how much he actually puts emphasis into albums, even though he drops them in a shorter time frame than most. I mean, when you hit that veteran status, which I mean, some could argue that he's already there. Artists take a couple years to make an album, and then they keep you waiting for years on end, i.e. Kendrick Lamar. But he still keeps it coming. And another album that I very much so appreciated from a while back, it kind of had a mixtape vibe to it more so than a whole album vibe to it. But I did like the Chicks Tape 5, and that was just, like I said, that was just last year. I mean, and it had that total different yin and yang vibe to it than the new Toronto 3 did. Like, it's a trip on how well he can go from he's talking more of an R&B vibe, and he's like more into the love and hip hop type deals. Not the show, but the love and hip hop type feels to the music and songs. And then all of a sudden New Toronto 3 comes out, and he's spitting straight bars, and it's got great storytelling. Now we'll get into the next album here. Unfortunately, due to the sadness of this album, I do want to give a big shout out to Legends Never Die by Juice WRLD. For those of you that know me outside the podcast, I'm not a big Juice WRLD fan. I will be honest about that. Now, I also am not one of those, the artist had passed away, so let me go ahead and hop on the bandwagon, and, all of a sudden I'm his biggest fan. Because I will say that I'm not a big Juice WRLD fan. If we want to categorize it as something, I just appreciate the album, and it deserves its recognition. Sometimes when you see albums after a person has passed away, their posthumous album becomes so altered and so changed up than how it originally was envisioned, and you can tell that the artist's vision never met what it was supposed to sound like. And to use an example of that, is a lot of the albums that Tupac had put out after he had passed away, outside of the 7 Day Theory, where you can just kind of feel that they just kind of, I mean, not that the albums came out super bad or anything like that, but you can tell that it didn't have Pac's vision in it, and it very much so went into producers' hands that kind of gave their vibe on how they wanted the album to sound, as opposed to what Pac really wanted. And with this album here, I didn't get that vibe. I kind of felt like they, you know, when it was all said and done, they didn't alter anything that Juice would have wanted for that album. And I'm still kind of getting through the album myself. But it like I said, it just kind of is like, it's so versatile in its own way. It, to me, didn't really sound what I was expecting. Because I'll be honest, I've only listened to a couple Juice WRLD albums, and this one hit a little differently than all the others, because it just kind of, it puts you in a whole like, wow, you were gone way too soon, bro, type thing. And another topic that I do want to kind of get into a little bit, that is a little bit outside of the norm of what we usually talk on here, which is, guys, we gotta put the drugs down. It's taking way too many lives, and it's causing so much destruction in the industry itself. And it's just like, I really do wish genuinely that a lot of these artists could beat their addictions sooner before it takes them away from this world, and it causes this heartache, because like after hearing that album, you're just like, wow, man, you really had more to put out. And unfortunately, unless they have another one put in the chamber, there may not be another album after that. The same vibe that I had kind of gotten even from Mac Miller's album. It just kind of feels like, damn, bro, you're gone way too soon. Now, to kind of keep the train moving, I do want to talk a little bit of controversy, because we do like to do this on Bars2Chains, as you have heard from episode 1. We like to keep you guys intrigued and have a little bit of argument. Now, being that I don't have my co-host here, we're going to play a little bit of a good cop, bad cop with these albums. So the 3 albums that we're going to get into today are, as far as our controversy take, is going to be Funeral by Lil Wayne, Music to be Murdered by Eminem, Dark Lane demo tapes by Drake, and we're going to get into those. Now, I know I'm going to piss off a lot of the Lil Wayne stans that have kind of goated him, per se, which, as you guys kind of go down the pipeline, that isn't going to be me. I am a big Lil Wayne fan, but I don't do the whole he's the GOAT because he puts out so much music, because, I mean, really, I care more about the quality than the quantity. Now, I'm not saying that the quality isn't there, but I will say that, and when I break into this album here, I just didn't get that vibe from Funeral. Like, it kind of was one of those hit the snooze buttons, give myself a little yawn, because I just couldn't get into it, and I don't know why. I just felt like there was just not enough oomph to it. Now, the bars were there, but one thing I will say is I am not a huge fan of when Wayne is getting into the singing part of his albums, and it just kind of doesn't sound right to me. Like, I don't know why that is, but it just kind of is like, I don't know. I mean, I wasn't digging it. And it's not that it was a terrible album. I wouldn't categorize it as garbage or anything like that, but it was average. I mean, I wouldn't put it in his top 5 or really even in his, top 6 or 7. It's kind of hitting the bottom of the barrel to me. Maybe even the worst out of his catalog, but not that his catalog isn't something to recognize, because he's one of those like Jay-Z and Kanye types where like their worst album is to another artist their best album. You know what I mean? So that's just kind of how I felt about it. Now, to kind of get into also the one thing I did like about it that was super unique, that maybe not a lot of you know, and maybe you do because it was talked about when the album had come up, but the 24-second runoff that he did for Kobe was very, very appreciated on my end. Like, I mean, being that it was a very short time period from when the album had released to when Kobe unfortunately had passed away, it just was a really heartfelt sentiment, and you can tell that the artist was like, I need to do this before we even put this album out, because Kobe was a man that deserves to be recognized and will live on for generations forever. The next album I would like to get into now is the Music to Be Murdered by Eminem, which a lot of people felt a lot of different ways about this album, myself included. For some of you that know me, on social media, I tend to give Eminem a lot more praise than a lot of people do nowadays, because, you know, being real, rap music is different than when he was at the top of the food chain, where he was dropping, you know, back-to-back diamond albums type ordeal. And it's a different game now. So a lot of people feel that his music is still genuine in its own respective reasons, but it could be better every single time. And that's the vibe that I've kind of even myself have felt at times. I will say that I was big on Kamikaze. I did like it for the reason that the way that it was schemed up. I mean, it just came at that, like, it kind of seemed like since the Marshall Mathers LP 2, that he just had enough of the critics, and he just decided to kind of go, you know, like a kamikaze jet and just go straight at everybody. But the problem with it was this album had the same intent, but the difference is that he's still kind of doing this deal where he's like, has these like, it's kind of hard to explain. Like, he has these like, sorry, I'm trying to think of like the way to classify this, because it's in its own perspective. But he has these stories about, you know, talking about how these dates aren't working out, or these relationships or situationships, if you want to classify it as anything. And it like pops up on every single album, and it kind of feels awkward, because it's like, you know, you want us to be sold on, you know, it's still the same M, and I'm still top of the food chain, and I'm still willing to talk about the stuff that, you know, other artists won't talk about. And it's still kind of like, it kind of like feels a little sellout to me. Like, back then, I mean, I'm one of those hardcore M fans where I was listening to the dude from the Slim Shady LP all the way up until today. And it's like, you can't keep coming up with the excuse of, I'm trying to abide by certain rules that maybe my fan base has put on me, or that I have to play by a certain set of rules now, because realistically, you don't. I mean, like, if you want to be honest about it, like, there's still artists that are still having the gritty rap that they started with from day one, and they don't change up. So it kind of seems like you want to be more appeasing to your fan base, whereas, I mean, that's cool and all, but your fan base is waiting for you to revert back to your old state. Now, I personally liked the album. I mean, I didn't think it was like a classic or anything, but I appreciated the change up of its own basis, where before in Kamikaze he was going at the mumble rap genre of music, and then he comes into this album he has Juice WRLD on it, which was a good song. I liked it. Godzilla was dope, because he still shows off his unique skills in terms of being able to spit quick and then go back, you know, and then just kind of keep being able to mix it up. But even then, a lot of people argue that they get frustrated when he tries to out rap people. But it's like, dude, you're already the GOAT. I mean, there's no reason you're not out rapping anybody anymore. You know what I mean? Like, people have already given you that respect that you are the GOAT. I mean, even when MGK went at him, like, he's just like, yeah, bro, you're the GOAT, but you're trash now, which, you know, some people are entitled to that opinion, because people are like, dude, if you're talking about comparing it to something, you're a pit bull trying to bark at a chihuahua. Like, yes, hypothetically speaking, you should be out rapping these people, but you don't need to put yourself on a pedestal to feel like you have to. But a lot of people are frustrated with you because you're not putting out the music that you claim that you are still capable to put out, and it seems like you pull your punches when you're making your bars, and it turns into you're getting this bad feedback from your albums because it's something that you're putting together. Now, again, this is coming from probably one of the biggest Eminem fans you'll meet. I can tell you Eminem up and down, but I will own it when my artist is doing certain things that just don't sit right with me. But again, I did like Music to Be Murdered By. I thought it was a lot better than his last full album, which was Revival. And way better. I'm not even comparing the two. One was not great at all. And then this one was a little better in terms of the regard of the intro was hard as hell. When I heard the intro, I was like, bro's about to go off. And he did, but there was a little bit of throwaway tracks in there. But one thing I did take away from that album that I'm excited to see if he does in future albums, that, it very much so could come to his advantage when we're going down into future albums, is his work with Anderson .Paak and Lock It Up. I like that song particularly because it didn't have the Eminem vibe to it that is normal, which is the hard beat that is like goes in tune with how hard he's trying to spit, where it just kind of had almost that like Lord Above type vibe to it, where it doesn't really blend with what Eminem normally does, and it has a different versatility to it. So that's kind of my thing on it. I can talk M all day, but being that I do want to kind of give this last album its due diligence as well. It's due respect, I should say, because really it does deserve a little more than diligence. It deserves its respect. Which is the Dark Lane demo tapes by Drake. A lot of people have a lot of different vibes when it comes to Drake, and it's a lot of because of old news. I know to rap experts, a lot of people had written him off because the whole controversy of him not writing his own stuff came up, and people were like, "Oh, you're not a real rapper because you don't write your own stuff." Which, to the GOATs, yes, that is a correct statement. But let's be real. It's 2020. Not a lot of artists write their own stuff. When we talk artists, a lot of them are like teams. If you want to be real about it, like each artist is kind of its own franchise team. Like, because you have so many people that put the hard work into making that artist pop, that it's like, it's just a different day and age of music. To where I don't feel like we should be writing off Drake as a rapper, because I'm going to be honest, a lot of the stuff on that album was straight heat. And it's because he finally got out of having to make it pop. You know what I mean? Like, he got into, I'm going to make it more darker toned. And that's why I appreciated it, because it wasn't the, spit some bars here, spit some bars, and it's lighter toned, and he's spitting on something that any artist could have spit on, and it, is like, oh, okay, it sounds super kind of like mainstream, if I want to categorize it as something else. But he kind of paid homage to old classics that were like, back then when they had came out, were already dope, and he kind of put his own twist on it, even using some hooks from back then, him using the hook from Superman and putting his own twist on it from Eminem. And then he kind of he had remixed the old Jay-Z track and put his own twist on that too. It just, like I said, it had so much versatility to it that from track one to track the very last track, it didn't sound a whole lot like it was being repetitive, and he didn't attempt to be, because Drake's one of those dudes where you can tell that he knows that he could not say anything on a track and it's gonna sell. Like, it's funny to say that, because, and it's kind of sad that, people buy into brand names like that, because it's true. I mean, if someone put out one song, you'll see a Drake album that had 3 songs on it go double platinum, and then something that maybe not a popular artist puts out has to have bangers from intro to outro, and it doesn't get the takeoff that some of these bigger names get. But again, to kind of go back, the When to Say When track was probably my favorite, only because like I said, I'm a big Jay-Z fan, and the fact that he kind of, on another note, I'm super glad that they finally squashed their beef, and it's like, bro, thank you, Lord, because they needed to, and I'm tired of seeing the feud between those two, because those two are going to be, and they are already, I mean, Jay-Z's already been in one, but those two are juggernauts in the rap game history of all, and being that both of them still kind of make music, Drake obviously still well within his prime, but Jay-Z kind of pops in here and there, but when they work together, it comes out pretty damn great. I mean, I rarely have a problem with any of the features that they do together. So, but to kind of get back into to breaking down this album, like I said, it just had everything you needed from it. Drake's another one of those versatile artists where when he's even doing some singing stuff here and there, it still knocks, and it still knocks to both genders, where there's a big portion of his female fan base that appreciate the R&B tone that he has to his music, and then you have my fellas out there that appreciate all the bars that he spits on there. Now, again, if you want to take the album for its core element, it's not something to sleep on at all, and I don't think anybody really did. I mean, but it's kind of weird though, because it just didn't have the takeoff that Scorpion did, and it really rubs me the wrong way, because I actually probably prefer this album more than I preferred Scorpion, due to the fact that he didn't go for the mainstream take. He went more for the, let me show you how I can write my bars, spit my bars, and hit these beats so hard that you're kind of taken back, like, wow, I need to listen to that again, because he really said some stuff that he hasn't said for a really long time. I mean, even more so to date back to even his first couple albums. I mean, when I heard the Dark Lane demo tapes, I kind of felt like I needed to go listen to Thank Me Later and his early stuff, because that just kind of gave me that vibe. It kind of almost felt like he went back in time and kind of got back to his bar spitting, and then blended it with his new beats that he works with nowadays, and kind of found some way to chemically create an experiment that just popped. I mean, it worked for me. I mean, it's definitely going to be hard to put 2020's top 10 together when we do that, because it packed so much heat that it's hard to dissect every single album and not put one over the other. Even the albums that I had talked about today earlier, it just kind of felt like it was, every album just sounded so different than the other. Unfortunately, my co-hosts haven't given me the full leak on all the albums that they're appreciating. So unfortunately, they're kind of being selfish, and they're not telling me everything that I'm expecting to hear when we talk about our top 10s, which is fun. This podcast is going to be definitely fun in that regard. We are going to be able to make it sound like it's genuine, I mean, I don't ever throw shade at anyone else's work, but, you get podcasts where you can kind of expect what you're walking into. But this isn't going to be that. This is going to be, we might be talking sports today, we're talking music the next day, and maybe we're talking something completely different the next day. Now, we will stay in music and sports as far as topics, but episode 3, it's going to be so much to pack in. Now, to kind of give you the hints, because we are getting ready to close out this show, we are going to be talking some hoops and some ice. As you all know, the NHL and the NBA are officially back. We should be expecting games here. If I'm correct, I believe the NHL is starting here soon. Sorry, don't quote me on that right now. I believe they had said something about it's starting in either August or the last week of July. So regardless, we are going to unpack so much that has been released to us in terms of all the NBA free agency moves that have just happened, down to the NHL getting ready to have a unique format, a lot like the NBA, where they've allowed certain teams to compete into kind of like a March Madness vibe, which if down the road when we get into March 2021, you guys are going to find out how big of a college hoops fan I am in terms of when these tournaments and all this stuff comes up. I love it. I love the way that the format is. And I kind of almost hope that the NBA and the NHL do what they're doing today, or not today, doing this season, do it down the road. Maybe at the halfway point in the season, they have a little bit of these like mini tournaments, and it counts towards something down the road, something like that. Also, the MLB is also coming back as well. Something to take note to. There's just a lot going on that needs to be recognized, and we're finally getting sports back, and it's finally in full swing, and it's finally going to be something to look forward to. Unfortunately, the sports world has been put on pause for some time now, and it's about time that we're back into the full swing of things. Now, to make this episode special, we will be having some guests coming in that are very familiar with their respective sports, and it's going to be something you don't want to miss. I can tell you this much. If you're ready for sports to come back, you need to tune into episode 3, because you are going to hear the unbiased take on how they feel that these sports are going to come back versus problems that could occur that they could, combat it with. There's no reason to be afraid of getting sports back up, just because, at some point we need to cross that bridge. I mean, I know a lot of people feel different about how, the world should be going right now, but at some point in time, we just need to kind of ease back into the normal life of everything. It sucks when these things happen, and I genuinely feel for the people that are going through it, but we got to keep moving forward in a positive direction. With that being said, we would like to take this time out to give a big shout out to all my Denver artists out there. I see all your guys' hard work, all the way from all the awesome production that's coming out of all these albums that I've been hearing, and all the hard work that all these artists that are grinding in studios, getting these albums out to us, and even more so in the respect of making it a competition. I see a lot of artists out there that are like, hey, you know what, I'm going for the Denver crown. No, you know what, I'm going for the Denver crown. I'm gonna outdo you. Not that it's a rivalry, but it's fun to see competition in your own city, because it kind of is like, hey, we're evolving, we're gonna be put on the map, and when we do, you're gonna be talking about who the king of the city is in terms of Denver, and I want that to come to my city, and I love it, and I appreciate all the energy and the hard work that these artists and producers are putting in to give it its proper shout outs. My very own cousin with his album Howlbound that we talked about in episode 1. Again, if you haven't already listened to it, you need to go listen to it. It's something that needs to be appreciated, because it's an album that's even taken off overseas into Russia. It's something that is very appreciated outside of its own city and even its own country. So do go check this out. I will be giving artists an opportunity to send me some of your work. I'll review it. I'll give it, my take on it. And for artists that are that I feel are in that same category as these albums that I review on here, maybe we even bring you in as a guest. We'll come break down your album song by song, and I'll kind of get to know you, and you can be on this podcast that's going to give an unbiased opinion on how we feel about music and sports, and even for my fellow athletes out there. So we are going to go ahead and close this episode out now today, though. I do want to give a special shout out to everybody that has been streaming this podcast. We appreciate you, and we love you guys so much. And all the fun things that are going to come to this podcast. We can't wait to get all the fun content out to you guys. Do us a favor, though. Go ahead and follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at the Bars2Chains Podcast. And stay tuned. We are in season 1, and we have plenty more to come to you. Episode 3 should be getting recorded this week as well. So if you would like to hear some stuff on there, that NBA and NHL type stuff, feel free to let me know. But again, love you guys all. Thank you guys so much, and I hope this episode is reaching you guys all in good health and in safety, guys. Much love. Thank you guys again. Have a good one.